Hmm. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday evening. It's Sunday Night Alive time here in Florida. Sunday Night Alive time where you are as well, since you're here with me. So good to be here. Tonight's topic is quite fun. Going beyond yourself. Hmm. Yeah, so for those of you who are new to me, my name is Reverend Denise Schubert. I am a New Thought minister. I live in Naples, Florida, and I'm streaming to you live from Naples tonight. And we come together every week to explore what it means to live a life of spiritual power. We come together every week to really to take a pause in the comings and goings of our days and to simply remember that we are incarnated spirits and that we have ways of practicing that together. So we're going to do that tonight. If you're here with me, please do comment, say hello. I can see Les from North Carolina. Dina from Naples is here. So good to see you. So I'm going to take a moment and speak a word of blessing upon us. I've been working all week on the conversation about the ego and our relationship to our ego, and what it means to evolve or to awaken or to emerge away and out of living a purely egoic existence. So it's very, very important because it is the key really to our happiness and our peace and our ability to make a difference on the planet. It's also soul satisfying to not be so attached. Uh, my inspiration this week, we've been studying at the Unity Church where I am a minister. We have been studying The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. For those of you who are with me tonight from North Carolina, I apologize for the repeat performance, but it's really the same topic as I talked about in church today. I did the Sunday message and we talked about going beyond, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight because I'm not so sure that we can talk about it too much because it's so important for our own spiritual growth and so important for the world we live in. So if you're with me, thank you for being with me. Let me take a moment and bless us. I do that. So to bless something is to call it sacred. And I want this time together to be a time of spiritual upliftment, a time of spiritual attention, and not just one more video or one more YouTube to watch. So just take a moment with me and breathe into the moment. Just let your day melt away from you as we come together on this glorious Sunday night. And we turn our attention to the matter at hand, which is our spiritual growth and development, our coming out of the world of effects, beginning to take responsibility and co-creating our life. And I simply know that we are surrounded by and buoyed by some invisible infinite, and that whatever name we want to call that, I know that it is the source of all love, the source of all beauty, the source of all wisdom, the source of all peace, and that it is the very life of our individual life and the life of each and every person here tonight and each and every person anywhere ever. And so I call this time together great. I know that there are insights to be had and aha moments to be had and humor and fun to be had. And so we let this be together. And so it is. Amen. So it is. Amen. So, yeah, so great to see you. I trust everyone can hear me just fine and see my beautiful face. I cannot see your beautiful face, unfortunately, but I can see you if you check in with me. So uh, Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, is a wonderful book. And I'm going to tell you that I love the words together, untethered soul, because our soul is tethered and it's tethered to the ego. Tethered, the definition of tethered is primarily when an animal is tied to something. Like if you are riding a horse and you tie it to a post, that you're tethering the horse to the post. I love the example of circus elephants. So circus elephants oftentimes, and I don't like this, by the way, this is incredibly bad behavior by humans, but they used to get elephants and they would tether them to a pole, and then the elephants would walk around the pole. And sometimes they would use the elephants for people riding on their backs, or sometimes just for amusement. But it's very interesting that if you took an elephant young enough and you tethered it to a pole and had it do that in the circus, even when you took the tether away, it would still walk around in circles. It would not know that it could leave, that it could walk away from the pole. So, a little bit, when we talk about ourselves, we are the untethered soul, we are tethered. We start out tethered or tied to a certain way of being, a certain way of thinking, a certain way of living because of our upbringing, because of the past, because of our orientation and our indoctrination into what it means to be human. Don Miguel Ruiz from the Four Agreements talked about um, the domestication of humans, which is this process that every human goes through. It doesn't matter whether you're an American or an Asian or African or European. When we are born into a social system. We're born into a way of thinking. We're born into a way of being. And we're taught from the moment we are born uh, in to what that means. Like, what does it mean to be a good girl or a good boy? What does it mean to be right? What does it mean to be respected? What does it mean to be successful? And all of that orientation, all of that training uh, begins to form our identity as a human being, which is also our identity as an ego. And so when we reach adulthood, we're actually living a life, not so much of our own creation or our own choosing. We're actually living a life based on all of that orientation, domestication, and indoctrination. And we end up being tethered to it. Now, the problem with that is that the ego itself, that you know, um, Socrates said, I'm going to give you a quote here. Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. So, what he really meant by that, as if I could ascertain what Socrates meant when he said it, but what I make up about what he said about that is that if we don't stop and question what we believe and why we believe it, if we don't ask the questions, who are we really? What's the meaning of life? What is the universe? What's my role in it? That all we're left with is the ego. All we're left with is the indoctrination of our childhood, which isn't at all who we are. So our in my philosophy, faith, and way of life, who you and I are spirits who have chosen to incarnate in a body. So it's not like as if we're encased in this sausage, right? We're not like a sausage with skin and the skin covering the bones and the blood and the brain and the mind. So we're not in here. We are actually a spirit. We're actually out here. We are infinite. We are an infinite being. And in order to live on this earth, we had to occupy a body and we have to have a personality or an ego. Otherwise, we would not be able to navigate this life at all. But it's very important distinction to make that you actually have a body. You are not your body. You actually have an ego. You are not your ego. You actually have a job. You are not your job. You actually have hair. You're not your hair. Do you understand that you are so much more than all of that? And part of our development as a species is to come to an awareness of that so that we can separate with our awareness and our witnessing, we can actually separate out so that we can have them and not be at the effect of them. So, um, so the topic for tonight is going beyond, going beyond. And so when we talk about going beyond, we're actually talking about going beyond your ego, going beyond the uh, the always way that we've thought, that we've behaved, that we think life is, because the ego. Well, we live in a world run by the ego. Well, that's number one. We live in a world that is primarily dominated by the ego and not by the spirit. And you can tell because the ego is fear based. So the violence, the greed, the unhappiness, the worry, the doubt, the fear, the not feeling good enough, all of that is so far away from the truth of who you and I really are. So we have to be able to go beyond that. That's where we're starting tonight. One of my favorite passages from the Bible is it's actually be ye not conformed, but do not conform to the world. So don't try to fit into the world. Don't try to be like everyone wants you to be. Don't try to be like you were told to be, but be transformed by renewing your mind. Be transformed by thinking a new thought. Be transformed by examining what you believe, why you believe it, and does it still serve you, still serve you. Now, none of this conversation would be very important if we were all living our best lives ever. If we were all happy, if we were all thriving, if we were all loving, if we were all satisfied and fulfilled, if we were all laying our head down at night, um, truly at peace with who we are and what we've accomplished, we wouldn't need this conversation, because the spirit is always fulfilled. The spirit is always satisfied. The spirit is always in a state of joy or happiness or fulfillment. And we as human beings are not. So this is about beginning to approach what it means to go beyond where you are in every moment. Going beyond is moving outside of our always ways of being into exploring what it means to do your life differently. Are you up for that? I am so up for that always. And by the way, it's not as if you go beyond once and then you're done. It's like if you take on the mandate, we are going beyond every day. We're going beyond in every situation. It's like, how can I love more? How can I be more fulfilled? How can I give more? Um, how can I float through my life with ease and grace and great fulfillment? Not walking around being afraid of the government, being afraid of death, being afraid of that's no way to live. As powerful spiritual beings, to live that way is it's an illusion. It's a mistake. So we're here tonight to talk about how to go beyond in every single moment. Now, there are three. I'm going to say there are three levels of conversation here. The first one is existing, and I would say that existing is what the majority of human beings on the planet do. We exist. And that is not a particularly bad thing, but it is, I would say that existing is a tethered state of being, tied to the past, tied to your strongly held beliefs, tied to your memories of the past. It is living purely identified with your ego. And in this state, our souls are tethered. Now, for when I use the term an awakened being, I am speaking of someone who has pulled the what do they call it? Pulled the sheet off the ego, like they've had a glimpse of something beyond the ego, going beyond this being tied to the past and our beliefs. But the majority of human beings have not done that yet. So when you haven't done that, it feels like I'm talking science fiction. It'll feel like I'm like blah, 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 like gibberish. Because if you're not who you think you are, if you're not your memories and your upbringing and if you're not a Democrat or Republican, if you're not black or white, if you're not if you're not any of those things, then what are you? So to the person who's unawakened, living purely existing in an egoic world, there is no idea of the more. There's no idea of the possibility. There's no idea of I can move beyond where I am. I do not have to be sad. I do not have to be angry. I do not have to be resentful. I do not have to be reactive to my mother or my parents or my children. I don't have to be afraid. I can live as if there's nothing to hide or nothing to lose or nothing to fear. So Michael Singer says there are two ways to live. You can live within your comfort zone, or you can work on your freedom. To become untethered is to be free, is to be moving in the direction of freedom. Your spiritual birthright, your natural inheritance is one of freedom. Whatever that may mean to you, it means different things to different people. But wouldn't it be great to actually feel and experience having a life of choice, that you can co-create your conditions and your life experience without being at the effect of not only your limiting ideas, but the limiting ideas that society puts around us. This is, I hope you're catching this in consciousness, because it is so truly important. So the first step really in going beyond is to move into identifying three states of living. The first one being existence. The second one is once you've observed your ego at work, you can then enter into a new reality. You can then begin the transformation of transforming your thinking. In Science of Mind, which is my faith walk, Ernest Holmes, who was a founder of the Science of Mind, said, change your thinking, change your life. It sounds so simple and so too easy to be true, but it actually is that easy. Change your thinking, change your life. Think different thoughts, have different outcomes. And why? Well, because the second stage of life is becoming. So the first stage is existing, ego-based purely. The second stage is becoming. And the becoming is that space and place where we are beginning to untether from the ego. We begin to use your God-given gifts of imagination, will, and commitment to architect your life intentionally. Now, in becoming, the ego is still kind of driving the car to a large part, but once you've been able to identify it, so like the ego's over here, like, hello, ego. In fact, the best way you're never going to get rid of your ego, by the way. The ego is absolutely and completely necessary for navigating your human being existence. It helps you cross streets. It protects you and helps you in so many ways. So we're not trying to annihilate the ego. And I know that in some thoughts, we think we have to lose the ego. You're never going to lose your ego. Never. So, but when we untether from it, we allow ourselves to have an ego the same way that we have a body. And we begin to then discover, that we can, by our affirmative thinking, by our changing our minds, by our study, our affirmations, our meditation, our visualization, our prayers, our commitment, that we can begin to stabilize our life. A life run by the ego, depending on your circumstances, you will have faulty life structures. And by faulty, I don't mean wrong. By faulty, I mean not strong. So the life structures are money, love, money, relationships, health, your creativity, money, relationships, health, creativity, work. That's good for now. Most of us, when we hit adulthood, have at least one or more of these which are not strong. They're not solid, that we're not great with money, or we're not great, our health suffers because an ego-based life is a life of struggle and stress is not good for any of us. So when we move into becoming, we learn that there are spiritual laws and principles which operate in our lives exactly the same way as gravity operates in the world. So just like gravity, which is a real thing, right? It's a physical law, and we all know how it works. We all know how it works enough so that we don't walk off cliffs or into holes because we know we're going to fall and hurt ourselves. Well, there are spiritual laws and principles as well. Every spiritual teacher you've ever listened to, every faith tradition outlines them because they're the same for everyone. That's, the law of cause and effect, the law of you reap what you sow, the law of it is done unto you as you believe, the law of mental equivalence, the laws of reciprocity. These are spiritual laws like gravity that when we become aware of them, we can use them. And we can use them to craft or architect or design a life that we want rather than a life that the ego wants. Because remember, the ego wants to be right. The ego wants to make other people wrong. The ego wants you to feel puny and small. The ego, there's a quote uh, that I used on Thursday. It's like a good day for the spirit is a bad day for the ego. So, so when we begin to discover these tools, and it really just is a discovery. I've been doing a course called Inner Engineering. And I love, love, love these two words together because the teacher was talking about how we have become so, in the last 150 years, we have become master engineers of the external. That we have, for God's sakes, we put a man on the moon. We have artificial intelligence, which is replacing a lot of human effort. We have airplanes and smartphones and smart TVs, and we build bridges over great spans of water. So this teacher says we have perfectly begun to master engineering the outer world, but that we have completely ignored engineering our inner world, that we are still as stupid and as violent and as crazy as we have ever been. And I love this to death. I love it to, no, sorry. I love it to life. I love this idea that we can begin to turn our attention to inner engineering. So these spiritual laws and principles are part of the engineering of your body, your emotions, your thoughts, our health, our spiritual health, our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health. Your right thinking, your disassociation, becoming untethered from the ego and going beyond the ego, moving into the truth of who you really are, is good for you on every single level of your existence. So I invite you to take seriously this going beyond who you think you are, who your ego says you are. You are so much more. So obviously, the first level of living is to exist, which is good. Thank God we exist. This earth is beautiful. It'd be sad if we didn't exist, but it's limited. There is limited possibility in purely existing. There's a beautiful saying also which is in God, all things are possible. There is so much more possible for you in life with just a little bit of untethering from the idea that you are weak, that you are too old, that you don't have a college degree, that people in your family are like this, or that the world won't accept you like that. It's none of that is true. There is no truth to any of that. It's all secondary causation. The only cause in back of everything is God. The only cause in back of everything is God as you, as the spirit of you, which is unlimited. So, so the final stage of living after you move out of existence, so you go beyond existence, and then you're going to even go beyond becoming, because becoming in many ways still has tied to it all of the ideas, the thoughts, and opinions that we were raised with. You're not quite untethered in the becoming stage. You do become more masterful, and you do become more adept at moving beyond what is obvious and beginning to talk to yourself and counsel yourself in such a way that you could begin to heal the areas in your life that need healing, and you could begin to stabilize the areas of life that need stabilizing. But where we're going, the actual purpose of the work that we do on a spiritual level is to step into being. Now, being is different than becoming, because being is where in fact, I think I have, let me see what he says here. I have something that somebody said that I like the way he said it. Okay, so this is a little complicated, but listen. He says, um, the difference between an enlightened and unenlightened being, which simply means somebody who has untethered from the ego and somebody who has not, right? So another word for that is awakened. The difference between awakened being and an unawakened being is that one is becoming something and expressing their selves in the striving to become that. I'm going to stop there for a minute. So, so when we move out of purely existing, I'm getting very metaphysical on you, but please just stay with me. When we come out of the purely egoic state of existence, we then move into designing who we want to be. So we say, okay, I want to have more money. I want to be more abundant. And then we go about the business of figuring out how to become more abundant, right? We take classes, we move into prosperity groups, we read material on prosperity and abundance. If we want to be more loving, we might do some relationship workshops. So the becoming stage is really about trying to find healthier, more satisfying ways of living in the world. So there's still a little bit of ego in there, because there's some defining going on about what that actually means. Being, though, he draws a distinction here. He says, um, the other one, which is the awakened being, the other one is something, not becoming something, that is something, and is expressing that and moving through the world. So, in being, you discover ultimately, if you stay with it long, if you keep going beyond every day, keep going, just push beyond, push beyond, push beyond, you will move into a beautifully connected space with your source. You will move into a space in which you know that there is nothing in the world that you need to get in order to make you whole or complete. That it doesn't matter what it is. If there's the love you're seeking is within you, the abundance you're seeking is within you, the health you are seeking is within you. the satisfaction and fulfillment you are seeking is within you. Now, this is very, very deep. When you begin to identify with the spirit instead of the ego, so the spirit is not something you have like your body or the ego. The spirit is something you are. So this, you are a body of consciousness, birthless, deathless, and eternal. And you, as a part of your spiritual expression, have incarnated into this time and space and place. And in order to do that, you had to acquire, you had to accept, you had to take on a physical form and an ego. So, but the spirit itself is something you are, not something you become. So there's a very big difference between becoming and being. So what he is saying here, and that the other one is something, is, I'm going to read the sentence again. The difference between an enlightened and an unenlightened being is that one is becoming something and doing that, and the other is that one is being something and doing that. So the being something means you're going to move through your life being love, being abundance, being health, being wisdom, being fulfilled. It is so spectacular to live your life that way because there's no clinging to anything. You are in every day. Now he says, if you interact with your days coming from that place, you will have a peaceful and fully inspired heart. You will be unbotherable. You will be a blessing to everyone that you meet. You will be at peace. You will be at peace with whatever is. You will be detached and not clinging to life, not clinging to outcome. It's a very beautiful thing. And then he says, then one day when you least expect it, you will fall into the infinite. You will achieve what one might say is heaven on earth. Can you imagine can you imagine in this moment living your life as if there is nothing to lose, nothing to hide, and nothing to fear? Can you imagine living without any worry about your future? You know, as very hip spiritual beings, we actually get pretty good at forgiving the past, like letting the past be, which is a very big step, by the way. Letting the past be is essential from existing to becoming. Uh, um, so you can be actually a highly evolved spiritual person, and the future still is kind of a problem because we're worry warts. You know, the ego worries. The ego wants us to worry. I mean, if we didn't have worry, doubt, and fear, the ego would have nothing to do. It would be it would rear its ugly head. You know, so keep in mind also that when you decide to go beyond, when you start moving beyond your what Singer calls your comfort zone. So we are very comfortable being comfortable. And when we begin to change our minds and try new things and try behaving in new ways, you will be a little uncomfortable because our ego, first of all, doesn't want us to change. Change is not the name of the ego's game. Staying the same is the name of the ego's game. But it's like, you know how if you put up electric dog, so if you're a dog, one way of containing a dog is to put up a fence. But now we have electric fences, right? So there is no fence, but the dog still won't go outside the yard because when he approaches the fence, he gets uncomfortable. Now, little does he know that the discomfort it doesn't hurt the dog. And little does he know that all he has to do is go through the electric fence and then he'll be free. It's kind of like that with our ego, that when we begin to move beyond what the ego believes is good, right, and true, we get a little bit of discomfort in our solar plexus and in our body, even if we know that the change is good. You've been in a job, your ego may say to you, you have to be solid and committed. You can't be bouncing around all the time. So if you decide to change jobs because you've been in a job you hate for too long, even though it's the absolute right thing to do, even though it's a full expression of your right to change your mind and architect a future career of your choice, you may have a little discomfort because it's just that, as Don Miguel Ruiz called it, our book of laws. We have a rule book that we live by based on our past orientation. And when we start breaking those rules, there's a little bit of irk, irk. So don't let that irk stop you the same way that the electric fence stops the dog. So existing, becoming, and being. And these are I just made these up as a way to talk about and describe the journey of your spirit, the journey of becoming, the journey of going beyond. I believe and I live my life this way, and those of you who know me know that this is true, that we are never stuck, that there is no circumstance that you cannot go beyond. There is no circumstance or condition in your life that does not have attached to it numerous possibilities for outcomes. There is nothing stopping us from being happy. There's nothing stopping us from being wealthy. There's nothing stopping us from being healthy, wealthy or wise. So we keep going beyond. Does that mean shit doesn't happen? Of course things happen. But when you're free from the ego, you can react instead of respond. You can make different choices. You can ebb and flow like water over rocks. When water hits obstacles, it doesn't get stuck or stopped. It simply finds another way. That's what going beyond means. So I love this quote. I'll close with this quote by Emerson that he says, "Oh man, there is no planet, sun, or star that could hold you," missing a word in there, "could hold you if you but knew who you are." So if your takeaway tonight, I hope, is that you are more than you ever thought you were, that you are an ever evolving spiritual being. This life you are living now is just one more step on that evolution of being. And so go beyond the ego ultimately, and there's no rush because the stage of becoming is really awesome, because you will find out that you are so powerful that if you if you can practice this and get this, you could be downtown Milwaukee, park your car and need a quarter, and you will find a quarter. You will just look around and a quarter will appear. That's a stage of becoming. Yeah. So anyway. All right. So that concludes our lesson for tonight. Let me just invite you, if you love Sunday Night Alive and you want to support it and you want to support me in the work that I'm doing, you can do a love offering or donation or a tithe to Denise Schubert, Rev D Schubert at Gmail or Venmo or Zelle, any of those. And I appreciate them and accept them happily. I love the giving and taking. It actually adds to our mutual something. If you're interested in spiritual coaching, with a little conversation or help in getting over the letting go or the going beyond, you can email me at revdschubert@gmail.com. I'm not very expensive and I'm really fun. So that's also an invitation. Of course, you can always go to my website and see what is there, past blogs and past talks, and some wonderful African animals. So I'm going to pray us out, so don't go away. Let me conclude this evening with a prayer. I hope you all begin. Meditation is the best way, really, to draw a distinction between you and your ego or you and your thoughts. Because if you can become aware of what you're being aware of, you will eventually come to realize that there's a watcher watching your thoughts, an observer watching your thoughts, and you're going to wonder who that is. And at that point, you will realize that there's a you that is beyond the ego, which is the watcher and the observer, and ultimately the director and architect of your life. So may you find that. All right, so let us close our time in prayer. Simply turn within with me. Take a deep breath. Don't worry too much about trying to figure out what I just said or trying to effort too much. You can just allow it to bubble up and to do the work. And just continue to allow yourself be guided to teachers, to talks, to books, to activities that feed your soul. And so we conclude our time together through our connection and our collaboration as spirits, and simply move into a time of affirming and knowing the truth that sets us free, which is that we are powerful spiritual entities and that we are as valued and as important and as necessary to the evolution of all that is, as are the trees and the sun, the moon, the stars, the animals, the plants, that we are part of a universal spiritual ecosystem that is always for us, always cheering us on, always ready, willing, and able to provide us with everything that we need to have a happy, fulfilled, and lovely life. And so my prayer for you tonight is that you feel this truth, you move into it gently and persistently, that you go beyond any limiting thought or idea that you may have had in the past, and you recognize that in God all things are possible. And so deposit this prayer for you and all of us into the the bakery, the kitchen of the gods, simply knowing that there's always a sacred yes to our prayer. So I accept the fulfillment of this one on all of our behalfs. And so for tonight's being together and for the good that it is, the blessing that it is to all of us, I give thanks. We let this be. And so it is. Amen. All right. Peace and blessings to you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're here in Naples, join me Thursday night at Unity Naples for our talk on the past, present, and future. We'll repeat that talk on Sunday for all of you next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you soon. Peace and blessings.